Hello and welcome back on Bernama. Today you're with me, Elaine, and my guest Zalina Abdul Aziz, or Ninot Aziz, and you just watched the world online premiere of the book trailer for Naga, A Legend of Tasik. Hello and welcome.
Good morning, Elaine. Thank you for having me.
I'm very glad to have you. And we saw this fantastic book trailer that you were telling me about during that short session. Perhaps you can share with us a little bit about what this is. Naga, A Legend of Tasik, your first novel, because you were telling me that the ones previously were all anthologies.
Yes.
Tell me the difference now.
Okay. The anthology of stories were all based on myths going around throughout the country, and we actually have many legends from the Malay manuscripts as well. Actually, there's a exhibition at the moment going on in the library down the road. But these stories are from those manuscripts and stories that are told orally. Naga,
like legends and myths.
Legends and myths. And in our family, there is a strong tradition of telling stories.
Storytellers.
Yeah, storytellers.
Okay.
So my grandmother used to tell me stories. Naga is actually one of my favorite stories from her.
Yeah.
And then my mom also always tells all of us, especially my younger siblings, the Sangkanchil stories.
Right, yes. I remember those when I was growing up as well.
Okay.
And the anthologies are actually a collection of all those
collections
stories?
of all those stories. I wrote them because I was feeling, when I had children, daughters, I have 5 daughters, and I could see that they are familiar with Greek mythology, Egyptian legends,
Western,
yes. So they're very familiar with that, and they hardly knew the stories that I were told.
Yes.
So I said, oh my goodness, we're
going to lose our heritage.
Yes. So I researched. Actually, a lot of my work is based on research first, and then I put it together, and Utusan at that time was very kind to want to publish them. So that's how it all started. But very soon, I felt that actually 2 years ago, I was watching Sorcerer and the White Snake. And I said, if Chinese legends can be put onto screen so beautifully, why not Malaysian legends? And that is the whole background, actually. So Naga was inspired by a movie. And so when I wrote it, it was always with the idea, the dream and hope that Malaysian legends will make it to the big screen.
And will live on forever in that way.
Yes, will live on forever.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Naga. What is Naga about?
Naga is actually based on the legend of Tasik Chini in Pahang.
Okay.
The mythology is that there is an ancient kingdom below the lake.
Right, okay.
Okay, that is one part of it.
And like water people?
No, and a sunken, sunken city below the lake. That is one, because it is said that the community around the area find pottery and stuff like that. Okay. There is another legend that is familiar to me, which says that whenever in Pahang there's always this banjir, flood.
Yes, correct.
So before there would be a flood, the people would dream of this dragon,
right, which is Naga.
Which is Naga.
Okay,
that's one part. But the story told to me by my grandmother is actually of 2 dragons playing in the Lake Chini,
right?
And they wanted a bigger area, so they went off to the South China Sea, and one of them became the island Pulau Tioman.
Right.
So there's various stories.
Okay.
Yes.
This reminds me of stories that I hear, of Langkawi, of the Dayang Bunting, and all that. Yeah. So those are stories that we heard of when we were growing up as well.
Yes.
And I love that what you've done with the anthology, where absolutely it's so hard for us to be able to find anything that's of our own that we can identify with.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we probably know all the Hansel and Gretels and
yes. And they make it to the screen.
Yes.
Snow White, Hansel and Gretel, all of them really
which are childhood stories
for
a lot of Westerners, from the Greeks to the Russians to the Nords, for example. Yeah. And why not ours? Absolutely. Even Chinese mythologies are already on screens.
Yes. I grew up with all this. Yeah. I actually grew up with, it's like a one round circle. When I was much younger, I read the Hikayat Melayu.
Yes, that's right.
Then after that, throughout all the world fairy tales, all the world legends, be it Korean, Japanese, European. I read all of that. And then when I come home and I have kids, I realize that
there's nothing of your own to share.
Yeah.
And when is this already out, published?
Yes, this is actually published. For my anthologies, I basically did it local. But because my at the back of my mind is always the idea that this should go international. That is one of the reasons why I write in English. And I wanted to see how this ebook works.
Right. Okay, so this is available in ebook as well.
It is available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Ex Libris, but also ebook.
All right.
And I found that very interesting. So I just wanted to test it out. And I have people from Egypt,
Right.
from US writing to me and say they enjoyed it.
I see this because I see some of the comments that are coming from California, the US, in Egypt, in Next Libris, and they are, and also from our local Professor
Yes.
Ding Chumi,
Yes.
where they are now getting a feel or getting to know us, getting to explore who we are in terms of
we are,
our
yes.
legends at the very least.
Yes, because I always say the legends and folklores are actually the memories of our ancient civilization,
Right.
and I hold to that strongly because I think legends make up the psyche of the people.
Right.
We might not realize it, but somehow it is in us because then when we read it
Right.
and we experience it,
Right.
we know there's it calls to something inside of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even the wayang kulit,
Yeah.
the wayang kulit is actually stories.
Right.
Yeah.
That are told from generation to generation.
Yes. The mayung are actually stories. So part of what I do is trying to capture those stories before they disappear because with each generation, about 50% disappears.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And perhaps new stories come out of it, or
Yes.
new interpretations of the
Yes.
stories. I mean, these stories are your interpretations of.
Oh yes, it's very different from the actual legend, etc.
Yep.
Though I try to write in the spirit of Hikayat, which actually is very cosmopolitan. I tell that to people a lot because if you actually read Sejarah Melayu or you read Hikayat Hang Tuah or Awang Sulung Merah Muda, there is a sense of a journey and a cosmopolitan mind working behind because it's always beyond your shore.
Right.
The stories extend to journeys beyond where you are.
Correct.
And how you develop as the hero develops from a person who has a problem to a person who is a world traveler. It is always like that in
And
Hikayat.
is this different for Naga?
For Naga, I basically took the spirit that this land is part of a region, and therefore there is very much interconnection between the different kingdoms. Okay, and yes, it is a journey. It is a journey from a people who has a problem in Nagara. That is actually the story. There is a land which is based on the ancient kingdom Champa in Vietnam.
Right.
And the king there had a problem. Their people had a problem, and the princess who was born was cursed.
Right.
So she made her way. It was a travel. They had to send the princess over to Semenanjung Melayu, which is
Right.
our land,
Right.
and created a forbidden garden city in Tasik Chini.
Right.
And that's the story.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
That sounds
so-
very interesting because as I was reading some of the comments, because of course I have not had the chance to read the entire Naga novel yet, but it seems that it's quite an intricate weave of drama and betrayal.
Oh,
And,
yes.
perhaps you can share a bit about how that came about in terms of
Okay.
that theme.
Yeah. At some point, the story kind of wrote itself.
Right, okay. That's what a lot of people say when they're storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to prepare for Naga, I actually tried to place it in a certain time. And the way I did that was because part of the characters in Naga actually come from the Tang dynasty. There was a prince from the Tang dynasty. So that places it into the 9th century.
Right.
And actually in this region, there was a lot of things that was happening in the 9th century.
Right.
Borobudur was being finalized.
Yes.
Prambanan Temple in Indonesia, Yogyakarta that area, were all being built. The Tang dynasty was actually the most influential, one of the biggest cities, Chang'an at that time, Xi'an, our Prime Minister just visited Xi'an. So all that was happening in this region. And in Champa, the Champa kingdom were becoming very, 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 very prominent at that time. And so against that background, then I have Pahang, which is from where I come from. Okay, so Indrapura at that time.
Right.
So this is the research that went through. So in the story, you will find bits and pieces of the land, Tasik Chini, how we traveled during those days. Ships. Ships were a norm to the people of our land because we were a maritime society. We traveled, etc. So all that against the background of what happened around the world. For example, porcelain in China at that time was a gift which the prince brought for the princess in Tasik Chini. So all those things sort of just come together.
Okay. Now, I think one of the questions that we had was that how do you separate fact from fiction in the story? Because you intermingle legends, folklore, myths, and there's also the fictional part, which is the story of the princess. And how do you stay true to the myth in this case?
First and foremost, the history, I want to say this before I go on further, I'm not a historian.
Okay, all right.
I must qualify that first. But anyway, the history forms the background.
Right.
Okay, but the story in essence is the story of the protagonist, the princess and her friends, and a prince who came from afar, who are thrown into a conflict because of their the political conflict at that time in Champa, and they had to try to save Champa, but there was sorcery and magic going around, and this comes as the fiction part. So the history is the background, but the actual story is the story of the young teenagers who are prince and princesses and warriors, how they had to seize the moment and face the challenges that they have, how they had to go beyond their predestined fates, okay, and decide that they have to be strong and do something for their country.
So that's kind of the morality of the story as well, that it comes in. Now, talk about the book trailer called, well, of course, for Naga Tasik Chini. You're telling me that it was actually self-produced. Perhaps you could share that with us.
The book trailer, the concept for the book trailer actually came from my daughter, who actually also did the
cover.
Dragon design.
Right, okay.
Dragon illustration.
Right.
She came up with the concept, how it should be, and her friend, a fourth-year architecture student, Shimo, actually put the whole thing together. Now, the reason why, another thing that I like to talk about actually is Naga is a collaboration. In the beginning, I used to write solo. I do research, and then I write the stories. My mother actually is one of my editors, and she criticizes my work very, very thoroughly, so that it goes to the next level. But where Naga is concerned, my mom became my research head of research, so to speak. And I constantly send the manuscripts to friends to see how I can improve it, feedback, etc. And the illustrations, I had
someone
my
from
illustration.
India?
No, Malik Rahim is from Malaysia, but he did the illustration. But when I wanted to put it all together, the design and all, I asked for the assistance from a friend in India, and I worked with Ex Libris in Australia, so that it would I just want to see how collaboration can take it further.
Coming together in this international, this digital age, it's quite amazing in terms of how it can be put together. Now, thank you very much for sharing all this with us. We look forward to Naga getting the reception it deserves, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to tell our stories to the next generations, so that they can remember where they come from, so that they can plot where they're going to go, and not forget who they are as people.
And also remember that though it is it is where they come from, but the world is actually where it can go to.
That's right.
And that's what I hope for Naga.
World is such an oyster. Just look at how Naga came together already. That is already, a testament to how, you can reach to the fathers of the earth,
Yes.
to make one thing happen. Thank you very much for sharing
Thank
with
you,
us.
Elaine.